God bless the United States.
Well, hello. Turks, Cenk Uygur Kasparian with you guys. Wouldn't it be amazing to do this show in fun times, in like good times?
I mean, is there ever fun in news? I mean, yeah. We wouldn't we'd be out of business. If everything was hunky dory, everyone would be out gallivanting, picking flowers, you know?
Well, wouldn't that be a lovely day?
Yeah.
Well, in fact, we're gonna pick some flowers in the bonus episode for the members today because we're doing Operation Joy. Okay, we're gonna spread those flowers around, flowers for everyone. You know, they say, oh, there is no place where you just get free something. Well, you get free happiness in Operation Joy. So a lot of great things there. I've got a quiz for you guys on Operation Joy.
Who teases anything with, I've got a quiz for you guys?
No, but you might. Hold on, the tease only gets worse.
Okay, great.
I might give you a prize. I probably won't, but I might. Okay, but anyways, I think you guys are gonna love it. We're gonna have a great show. We have old school tonight with Ben. But of course, unfortunately, the times being what they are, we've got plenty of stories that are disturbing. But I'm gonna tell you, in the midst of all this, I'm now definitively seeing hope. Okay, I know.
I love Cenk's declarative statements.
No, I'm seeing it.
He's the king of declarative statements.
It's okay. Definitive. I see a ray of light. I don't see like a giant hole. I see a ray of light though, and I'm gonna show it to you in today's show.
All right. Okay. Are we ready to do the news?
Let's do the newscast.
All right. Let's do the news. Well, we do start off with a pretty horrific tragedy that took place in New York. A horrific mass shooting claimed the lives of 4 people in New York City last night. And before all the details could come out, conservative commentator Charlie Kirk decided to make some statements based on complete and utter assumptions that were proven to be wrong and false. So he wrote on X, again, before all the details of the perpetrator came out, that he was just in New York City all weekend with our family, never felt safe. So many people in the city who don't belong, praying for all involved. There he is making a reference to undocumented immigrants. And the shooter in this case was not an undocumented immigrant. We're gonna get to the details of who he was or is in just a minute. But before we do, it is worth noting that one of the victims of this horrific event was an immigrant, a police officer by the name of Dillon Islam. He's among one of those individuals who was killed. He was an immigrant from Bangladesh, and again, a police officer. And it turns out he was a wonderful person as well. In fact, a close family friend said that Officer Islam had been a mentor to young men in a Bangladeshi community that numbers more than 100,000 in the city. When the officer joined the police department, his friend asked if his own mother had asked him, his friend and his own mother had asked him why he would pursue such a dangerous line of work, being a cop. And he told her he wanted to leave behind a legacy for his family, something they could be proud of. He is now dead because of this tragic shooting that took place in Manhattan. Now he leaves behind his pregnant wife and 2 other children. And as for the gunman, it turns out he was a Nevada man. I'll give you a few more details about the shooter in just a minute. But Cenk, Charlie seems to never miss an opportunity to preemptively politicize a tragic event like a mass shooting.
Okay, now it's clear. There's a very clear pattern both with Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro. I'm not sure who else is involved, and I don't know what's driving it. I don't know if it's funding, I don't know what it is, but they are gung-ho to turn things back into the culture wars, right? So everything is racial, everything is about religion and ethnicity and blaming people based on who they are. So this is now a pattern with Charlie Kirk. He's now said it 3, 4, 8 times in a row. Oh yeah, the dirty immigrant, the Muslims, oh yeah. Zora Mamdani on 9/11, right? So look, brother, I'm not bringing it up. You're bringing it up. And you're bringing it up in a super toxic way. So don't tell me you don't like the culture wars. And the minute there's any kind of story at all, you're like, culture wars, hate the other side, hate them for who they are. Oh yeah, you just noticed there's immigrants in New York. Hey, dumbass, there's been immigrants in New York from day one. The whole point of New York is immigrants. Have you heard of the Statue of Liberty? Have you heard of Ellis Island? You're outraged in the year 2025 that there are immigrants in New York. Come on, man, I mean, come on. Because nobody's that stupid. That's why I'm saying, like, there's an agenda here, obviously.
Yeah, and
right?
also he attempted to kind of straddle the two sides in regard to what's currently transpiring in Gaza with this, intentional genocide that's playing out. But in recent days, he's decided to essentially regurgitate Israeli propaganda and has repeated the lie that there is no starvation taking place in Gaza.
It's the funding. Okay, Charlie, who is it? Okay, I know you're never gonna tell us, but like, oh, you just decided, oh my God, I woke up one day and decided to smear all Muslims, the most common Israeli tactic of all time. Remember, America, you have to hate the Muslims. The problem is not the giant Goliath in the middle of the Middle East taking $300 billion from us and starting all the wars and attacking all their neighbors and occupying 5.5 million people and taking away their freedom. That is not the problem. The problem is the Muslims. Come on, man. And nobody's that dumb, okay? I get that a lot of people were brainwashed into believing that throughout the entire history of American mainstream media. But if you're in this business and you see the news every day, you can't think that Israel's the victim and actually be an honest person. Like if you come from that background, you got family in Israel and you're massively biased, I get it, right? But you don't come from that background and you're like, yeah, starving children is awesome. The problem is the Muslims. Okay, then all right, dude, all right. I get it, you're spreading hatred for probably financial gain.
But how about just allow the story to develop before you immediately jump into your, let me use this tragedy and weaponize it for my own purposes and to appease whoever is like funding me to say the garbage that I say. Like, how about maybe think about your own credibility for 1 second, let the story develop. But of course, you can't do that. Anyway, let's get back to the topic at hand. Who was the shooter? Well, the shooter was a 27-year-old man by the name of Shane Tamura. As I mentioned earlier, he was from Nevada and he actually drove cross country to Manhattan to carry out this horrific event. He attacked an office building in Manhattan, which houses companies including Blackstone, KPMG, and the NFL. So after he allegedly killed Officer Islam and 3 other individuals, he then turned his weapon on himself and committed suicide. He did carry a suicide note stating what his motive was. One page of the note accused the NFL of concealing the dangers to players' brains to maximize profits, sources said. A second page mentioned CTE and blamed football. A third page asked, "Study my brain, please, I'm sorry," sources said. So it does appear that he had an axe to grind with the NFL, and the building that he targeted did house the NFL. So he played football in high school, but he never played football professionally, and police have not found any evidence, or at least nothing has come up yet. Obviously there is an investigation going on, but so far there isn't any evidence that he had CTE. But there is some evidence that he had a history of mental health issues. We'll visit that in just a minute. But New York City Mayor Eric Adams stated that it appears as though he was going after the employees at the NFL. From our preliminary investigation, he took the wrong elevator bank up to the NFL headquarters. Instead, it took him to Rudin Management, and that is where he carried out additional shootings and took the lives of additional employees. Now, he did kill the police officer and then 2 other individual civilians. And this happened in the lobby of the building. I can't imagine what that scene was like, absolutely horrific. He killed the 4th victim and himself at Rudin Management's offices. Now, he did have a history of mental health issues as reported by ABC News. For instance, he had 2 mental health crisis holds in his background in Nevada, one back in 2022 and the other in 2024, law enforcement sources said. Those holds typically allow a person to be detained for up to 72 hours if they are thought to be a danger to themselves or others. And as we all know, mental health care in this country is a complete and utter joke. There is this allergy to holding people for longer than 72 hours if they have been proven to be a threat to themselves and to others. And instead of having inpatient mental health facilities to ensure that people who need the care are getting the care that they need, our country just releases people out onto the streets, and situations like this actually happen far more often than people realize. This happened in Manhattan. It happened in a building that houses, Blackstone and the NFL, which is why it's getting all the attention in the world. But come visit Los Angeles, where you'll see machete attacks by mentally ill people who are left on the streets to fend for their own. We live in a complete clown show of a country, and our politicians don't take it seriously. They don't care whether we're talking about on a federal level or a municipal level. They just totally abandoned their responsibilities. This guy was obviously suffering from some serious issues, didn't get the care he needed, had access to an AK-47 type assault weapon, and proceeded to carry out this horrific shooting that claimed the lives of 4 innocent people. Jake.
Yeah, so first of all, I was worried that it was Blackstone, they were going after Blackstone. Why was I worried about that? Because of the Luigi Mangione situation, which, by the way, that shooting happened only 15 blocks away from this shooting. So I was concerned that, here we go, people are starting to target executives and corporations, et cetera. Now, luckily, that is largely not the case, okay? So now it is in an office building, it is NFL, presumably executives he was going after, right? But it's very apples and oranges, so it's not really the same thing. So look, you always have fog of, they call it fog of war, but the first 24 hours, you'll hear a lot of things and a lot of speculation that doesn't turn out to be true. Like, for example, the right wing's getting on CNN because one of their analysts, do you have that part of it or no? One of their analysts said that the shooter was probably white. And he got that from a police source, right? Now, it turns out he wasn't at all, but they found that out a half an hour later on their broadcast. So then they correct it, right? But people go back and say, aha, even though the guy seems to be black or Asian or something like that, they're saying probably white, oh, they had an agenda. No, they didn't have an agenda on one, okay? So now, in terms of what actually did happen, look, guys, we can parse this 1,000 ways. Like, first of all, violence is dumb. Football gives people CTE, so the NFL is terrible. So because it leads to people's deaths, so let me go kill people. Makes no sense. The 3 guys on the ground floor having nothing to do with the NFL, including the cop who was killed. I guarantee you right now, the person upstairs he killed is not an executive, it's just a random person, because he shot the first person that he saw, right? So, and besides which, what difference does it make? Because he's mentally unwell, right? That's why you do crazy things like this, because you are crazy. And however you take that word, if you're offended by it, that's not the point, guys, okay? So now, look, to Anna's point, number one, we know what the common denominator is. They all have different ideologies, different reasons, different blah, blah, blah. The common denominator is guns. We also know that we can't do anything about it. This guy had an AR-15. AR-15 should be illegal. There's no way in the world that bill's gonna pass. It's America. And so you could pass easy ones like red flag laws. We won't even pass those. But now, since the politicians are totally immovable on that, even though they should move, I know they won't. That leads you to concentrating on mental health because you think maybe they're not such monsters and maybe they could actually spend money to help the average American so we're not constantly in mass shootings or the other things that go wrong or people living in the streets, etc. So far, that hasn't happened yet either. No,
it hasn't, it hasn't, because they don't care about us, okay? I wanna be clear about something. As we know, every time there's a shooting that makes headlines like this shooting, you'll have the left, meaning the Democratic side, talk about the need for gun control. You'll have the right talk about the need for mental health care. They're both full of crap. Neither side wants to do a damn thing about it. Neither side will do a damn thing about it unless the American people get together and demand change. And to be quite frank, we do need to focus on mental health care. That is a problem. That is a huge problem all across the country. We all see it on our streets, especially if you're living in a big city. And it's unacceptable to use that as a talking point and only as a talking point when it's convenient for them, but never actually do anything about it.
Yeah, and on that point, number one, Republicans cut mental health funding. after all their jibber jabber about, oh, it's not guns, it's mental health, they go to vote on it. They're like, yeah, that's why we should slash mental health funding. Okay, then you guys never meant, but you guys by this, like I used to tear my hair out about this for the last 20 years as we've been doing this show. But now you all get it, right? All the politicians are crooks and liars. So you knew that when the Republicans say that that it's really a mental health issue, they were going to go back and vote against mental health funding. You knew that, right? Now I'm hoping that everybody's beginning to realize the game here. Now turn to the Democrats. So they do care about mental health, and at the national level, they do want more funding. Okay, then you go to the local level, and you're like, okay, there's obviously a mental health crisis for the homeless in all these major cities. So can we help them and get them to a place where they could get assistance instead of just going, hey, their freedom to hang out in the streets and do the things that they're doing? Nope, not gonna do it. No, we believe in wild, insane libertarianism, where we give people with massive mental health problems the freedom to die in the streets.
Yeah, and honestly, look, I can only talk about this in the context of a state as deeply blue as California is, okay? But as a Californian, oftentimes one of the other talking points that you'll hear from the Democratic politicians who govern this state is, oh, the big problem with mental health is Reagan defunded the asylums. He closed down the asylum. We're talking about Reagan. We're talking about Reagan. We're going all the way back to the 1980s. This is California. Republicans have no power here. Zero, none. This is the highest tax state. What is your excuse for not implementing policies that provide mental health care to people who need it in this state? Please explain it to me.
Yeah.
This is why I have no faith in the Democratic leadership in this state, because they're pathetic. They have all the power in the world and they still somehow manage to blame Republicans from decades past for everything that's wrong in the state right now. Come on.
Yeah, guys, first of all, are we talking about Reagan? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, we're talking about Reagan, literally.
So seriously, Gavin Newsom often brags about how California is the 5th largest economy in the world, and it is, that's amazing. Only the rest of the United States, China, I believe Germany and India now are larger than California. Then California comes in above Japan. Like, it is monstrous economy, and in an awesome way. Don't tell me you don't have enough money to reopen those clinics or those asylums, but in a humane way, not in the like ludicrous way that we ran them in the past with no funding and barbarism, etc.
They were abusive, they were terrible. We obviously do not want that. But why would we have to either deal with the status quo or go back to that barbaric system?
Yeah, and so think about that, guys. They do that false choice on purpose.
Yes.
No one like that has thought about it for a minute. You might not have ever thought about it, but if you're a policymaker, you get people in a room and talk about it for 5 minutes, you'd realize that the two choices aren't, all right, let's start up really barbaric asylums where we abuse the mentally ill, just like we did like 50, 60 years ago, or we let them die in the streets. Those are your only two options. Every rational person in the room would be like, why are those the only two options?
Yeah, we reject that.
And why are you guys saying nonstop, if you're Democratic politicians in places like California, that those are our only two options? What a ridiculous thing to say.
Right.
That's because they don't care. Look, all the money has to be funneled to donors and allies. Donors and allies, Democrats and Republicans. That's why you have no problem is ever fixed, which leads me to give the last word to one of our members on TYT.com. Shelby wrote, someone I work closely with came from the NFL and had worked with one of the victims, who thankfully is now in stable condition. These shootings really will impact us all, eventually, as long as our laws around guns remain as they are. So as long as all of our laws remain as they are, as unfortunately I've been telling you now for about a decade, there's going to be a mass shooting near you. Do not be surprised. It is coming in your direction. And now, unfortunately, dozens of people have written in over the years saying, when I first heard you say that, I thought, well, that seems maybe a little hyperbolic. And I just had a mass shooting near me, right? So that's what our politicians are doing to us. They refuse to fix even the most basic needs of the American people. Even when the mass shootings are inside our kids' schools, they say we will never fix any of your problems. They take all of our money and funnel it to their donors. Bribery has ruined this country. We need to end the bribery so we can get democracy and America back. Fightcorruption.us.
All right, we're gonna take a break. When we come back, Donald Trump answered some questions about his relationship and his break from Jeffrey Epstein. Also, we've got some updates on the federal government's latest cover story for the doctored video of the prison that Jeffrey Epstein was staying in, where he was allegedly murdered. There's a lot to get into. We got to give you an update on what's currently transpiring in Gaza as well. So don't miss that. We'll be right back.
All right, back on TYT. So Titan writes in the YouTube member section, and hear me out. Imagine a world where everything is good. TYT still exists to cover the news, except the news is mostly the best places to see the most exotic birds and the best times to catch flowers blooming.
Oh my God, first of all, let's briefly talk about something miraculous that happened yesterday. I was on my morning run. And just as I hit runner's high, I had just hit runner's high, which is like the best euphoric feel. It's MDMA, but without having to take MDMA. Okay, I saw the most beautiful woodpecker. It flew right in front of me and then to a tree where it pecked away. It was so exciting. It was like the best way to start my day.
Save it for Operation Joy. By the way, people starting to write in for Operation Joy already. If you haven't experienced one, you must be crazy, dog. Hit that join button. Be part of the community. NDH 101 writes in on Twitch. Thanks again for your excellent programming and host. Appreciate you. Eclectic writes in on TYT.com. I have a new bucket list item now, thanks to Anna. Spending a whole day gallivanting and picking flowers. By the way, how fun would that day be? Okay, so I like it. We can call it Anna's Day. Okay.
Flowers are so great.
Yeah, Dragon says you gotta love a bright side, however dimly lit it may be. I hear, brother. Dragon Tree says culture wars come to the forefront with either party whenever they have no policy.
100%.
Ding, 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 ding,
yes.
ding. So what does Trump want to avoid talking about? The Epstein files, Israel, every other thing, his bad polling, his bad numbers on immigration, his bad numbers on the economy. So all of a sudden, here comes the right-wing shows to reintroduce the culture wars and Trump himself. Don't shoot on the goalkeeper said, to be fair, the NFL did hide that information.
They did.
But obviously that doesn't excuse a goddamn thing that he did. He agreed on both fronts. The NFL was despicable about that. Killing them doesn't help at all. Okay.
Yeah, like the point that Cenk was trying to make is that these victims had absolutely nothing to do with that. So like, how does it make sense to murder them?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So Gary Donahue writes in, my wife and I walk our dogs in an abandoned mental health facility here in Sonoma. That's super interesting. It's one of my many haunting places that used to take care of our needy and sick citizens. It's a huge, beautiful place with empty buildings, swimming pools, gymnasiums, and hospitals. So many employees and patients were displaced when we defunded these taxpayers-supported facilities. We stopped caring for each other, and now we're paying for it.
Yes.
Gary, that's a very powerful conclusion, and I think you're right, and I'm gonna try to borrow that line from you. We stopped caring for each other, and now we're paying for it. These are the consequences of not caring for each other. So that's why, again, another reason why I love this community. Open hearts, open minds. A Haunted Dragon now in YouTube member section says, hi, Cenk and Anna, can I get a what's up? What's up, Haunted Dragon?
Hello.
There you go, mission accomplished. Spanking Spider Dragon says, of course guns have more rights than we humans. Charlie Kirk hates himself and loves money more than his partner and kids. Well, I can't speak to what he loves more or less, but I can tell you that the idea that it was the immigrants' fault when you don't know anything about the shooting is absurd and turned out to be completely non-factual. And this country, look, I know it's cliche, but the country is literally made up of all immigrants except Native Americans. You could argue even they were immigrants, right? And by the way, all of the previous immigrants, the Protestants, the Catholics, etc., had no papers, no documentation. They just bum rushed the place. I'm not hating on them, but that's the history of America. So I'm not saying close the border, but be reasonable. All right, back on TYT. Cenk, Anna, Adrian Garcia, and Robert Wagner. Guys, thanks for hitting that join button below the video. We appreciate you. And CDN Norse Dog Dad, thank you for gifting a membership on YouTube. Casper.
I just think that if Trump wants to stop digging himself into a deeper hole on the Epstein thing, maybe he stops talking about it, because every time he opens his mouth, he finds himself in a worse predicament. But anyway, the latest has to do with his answers to reporters' questions while aboard Air Force One. Let's get to the details.
People were taken out of the spa, hired by him. In other words, gone. And other people would come and complain, this guy is taking people from the spa. I didn't know that. And then when I heard about it, I told them, I said, listen, we don't want you taking our people, whether it was spa or not spa. I don't want him taking people. And he was fine. And then not too long after that, he did it again. And I said, out of here.
Does that include Virginia Jeffrey?
I don't know. I think she worked at the spa. I think so. He stole her.
Questions are swirling over what exactly led to a fallout between President Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. They seemed to be good friends, and then suddenly they were no longer friends. And while taking questions from reporters today, Donald Trump was specifically asked about that and whether or not the break in their relationship had to do with the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was trying to poach employees from Trump's businesses. So today he stated that Jeffrey Epstein, quote unquote, stole Virginia Giuffre from him, who apparently was working at the spa in Mar-a-Lago. So that statement was during a press conference with reporters. And Trump did take several questions about his relationship with Epstein. I'm not sure it's helping him in any way. But that clip that we just played for you came near the end of the press conference. We have more to share with you. But so far, Cenk, what are your thoughts on what you heard in that clip?
Guy's mental. He's so dumb, he doesn't get it. Like, guys, hear me out. If you're a Trump supporter, right? What do you want Trump saying if he's innocent? Do you want him saying, yeah, I kicked Epstein out because he was a creep. I heard that he said something about a young girl, and I said, not on my watch. And I kicked him out because I was morally outraged.
That was the original story.
No, Trump never actually said that. His supporters assumed that that's what it was. See, they actually made a logical assumption because that's something that would have helped Trump. That would have,
right.
But he's a massive liar, but he can't even figure out how to lie right? So that's the obvious lie. Now, I say lie in this case because you just heard the truth from Trump. He didn't say that. He said that he was bothered that Epstein took some of his employees from Mar-a-Lago, and that's why they had a falling out. But brother, we all know Epstein was a massive pedophile and ran this ring. When you say that you're more concerned that he took a couple of employees from your spa, don't you see that you seem to have no empathy for the girls? And then you mentioned that's one of the most spectacular cases, an unfortunate case. We're gonna tell you more about that in a second. And you say, instead of like, I can't believe what happened to her, you're like, yeah, he stole her from, she was my employee. Like, before we even know about the spa part, he had already yesterday mentioned that this was the reason that he had taken some sort of employee from Mar-a-Lago. And
so
Jon
wild.
Stewart yesterday did a brilliant monologue where he's like, so your real concern was that he had poached a low-level employee, right? But now today, it turns out when you hear more details, it's even worse. He's like, oh yeah, I can't believe he took the girls and raped them, right? No, he took my girls. They were working in my spa. Oh my God, you're so dumb.
And look, I don't think he's trying to say he took my girls from my spa who we were abusing or anything like that.
No, I'm not implying that.
Yeah, I just want to be very clear. That's not what's being stated. That's not what's being implied. But you have to understand the point that Cenk is trying to make here, which is that Epstein is a known pedophile, was a known pedophile who was raping and abusing minors. And so when reporters are asking you why you no longer wanted a relationship with him, and the first thing you go to is, he was poaching my employees, it doesn't really bode well for you. It's not good PR. He understands good PR, right? That's not good PR. Okay, so that's what he said toward the end of his Q&A with reporters. Prior to that, he made other Epstein-related statements. Let's take a look at that.
You said yesterday your falling out with Jeffrey Epstein was over him taking some of the workers from your business. But your administration in the past said that you threw him out because he was a creep. So can you explain that discrepancy?
Well, maybe they're the same thing, sort of a little bit of the same thing. But no, he took people that worked for me, and I told him don't do it anymore, and he did it. And I said, stay the hell out of here.
Epstein has a certain reputation, obviously. But just curious, were some of the workers that were taken from you, were some of them young women?
Were some of them
young women?
Well, I don't want to say, but everyone knows the people that were taken. And it was the concept of taking people that work for me is bad. But that story's been pretty well out there. And the answer is yes, they were.
Yes, they were young women?
What did they do?
In the spa.
Jobs.
In the spa?
Yeah, people that work in the spa. I have a great spa, one of the best spas in the world in Mar-a-Lago.
Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, he's advertising the spa, oh my God.
Oh God, Jesus Christ,
I didn't hear
man.
that part earlier. Okay.
We're talking about the biggest pedophile ring in American history, and you're marketing your spa. So you see what I'm saying, guys? Like everybody else already knows it. The left knows it, independents know it, right? But for those of you on the right, can you not see what the rest of us are seeing? The brother has no empathy at all. It just doesn't even occur to him. It's amazing.
So Virginia Giuffre is the woman who had accused Prince Andrew of raping her. She has since committed suicide. And the whole thing is just, this whole thing is so tragic and disgusting and ugly. And it is well known by now that President Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were once friends, but in the early 2000s, the two of them had their falling out. Now, White House Communications Director Stephen Chung stated that the fact is that the president kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his club for being a creep. Now that vague statement does line up with previous reporting about Trump and Epstein's relationship. According to former Trump aide Sam Nunberg's 2019 account to the Washington Post, Trump said he banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago because of misconduct. Nunberg said Trump said he did so because Epstein had recruited a young woman who worked there to give him massages. This was years before the Epstein investigation became public knowledge, according to the Washington Post. Quote, he's a real creep, I banned him, Nunberg said Trump had told him. So like, why didn't Trump just say that in answering questions from the reporters? I think that he just seems very flustered when having to deal or respond to this situation. Anything having to do with the Epstein files, anything having to do with his past relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, which is actually very uncharacteristic of Trump. Oftentimes when he finds himself in the middle of some controversy, he has this unapologetic air about him. But when it comes to this issue, for whatever reason, he behaves very differently. Now, multiple reports, including a 2020 book by reporters for the Miami Herald and Wall Street Journal, have linked Epstein's ban from Mar-a-Lago to alleged overtures to the teenage daughter of a Mar-a-Lago member. Now, Virginia Giuffre was again a victim of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's horrific pedophilic abuse. She was outspoken in calling for justice for all of the victims. And she did sue Jeffrey Epstein back in 2009 and made clear what her claims were against him dating back to 2015. Other survivors have also stated that Giuffre's courage gave them the strength to come forward with their own allegations and stories as well. And as I mentioned earlier, tragically, she committed suicide earlier this year, actually. And she was working at Mar-a-Lago at the time that she unfortunately met Maxwell and Epstein. So in 2000, court records show Ghislaine Maxwell struck up a conversation with her outside a locker room at Mar-a-Lago. Giuffre was only 17 years old at the time. She was a spa attendant at the club, having gotten the job through her father, who worked there as a maintenance man. According to Giuffre, Maxwell offered her a job at the spot as a masseuse for Epstein after seeing that she was reading a book about massage, telling her that she did not need to have any experience. She said that when she was brought to Epstein's Palm Beach home, she found him lying naked on the table. Maxwell, she claimed, instructed her on how to massage him. It's just absolutely disgusting.
By the way, that's the same Ghislaine Maxwell that Trump was asked about over the last couple of days and said that the pardon is still on the table. Why? Maybe it'll be off the table if you remind Trump that Ghislaine Maxwell was Epstein's co-conspirator in poaching his low-level employees. Like that's the thing he apparently cares about, right? So
can we just take Trump's fairly recent comments about Maxwell and Epstein in context, right? Because it's not just about what he said in the context of this Q&A with reporters. It's also about him wishing Ghislaine Maxwell well when she was being prosecuted. You remember that? And it's like, why did you wish her well, knowing that she's the one who went to Mar-a-Lago, was the one who recruited one of your 17-year-old workers from the spa to be raped by the likes of Jeffrey Epstein? Why did you wish her well? Why?
And how does that not morally outrage you? If somebody was working here and somebody did that to them, I'd want to rip their head off.
I'd want to rip their head off.
I mean, I don't know, this whole building filled with empathetic people would be enraged, right? Trump's like, you took a girl from my spa. I mean, that could have cost me $1 or $5. Like, what is wrong with you? Okay, so look, I'm gonna go to our members because they made a whole bunch of really good points and I want to give voice to them. These are all on tyt.com. Newfie Dragon said, am I asleep or in the Twilight Zone? Did Trump just admit to being upset that Epstein stole his young spa girls?
Yes.
Yes, it's unbelievable. Okay, pessimistic progressive said, Jar of Jam Bongino said, always, always, always about how it affects him. Yes, he has no ability to empathize, but I think the best one and out of all these great comments is pessimistic progressive. Wait, you're telling me the guy who bragged about having the tallest building after 9/11 has no empathy? Shocking, right?
Yeah.
Yes, remember after 9/11, the first interview he does on the radio, he's like, now my building's the tallest in New York, which by the way wasn't true, but it doesn't matter, who cares? And he's like, no, I don't have the tallest building. I mean, who says that? And not like 10, 20 years later, like the day after.
Yeah.
As 3,000 people are burning still in the rubble of the building. He's like, now my building's the tallest. So, and why do you think that people say that and I know if you're a Trump supporter, you'll never believe it. You'll go the rest of your life never believing it, even though every other part of the puzzle confirms it. That he called people who were veterans, the people who were in the military, suckers and losers. And the follow-up question was, I don't get it, why they do it? Because he doesn't understand why you would have empathy for any other human being, why you would ever sacrifice for any other human being, why you wouldn't always look out for yourself. And that's why this idea that he's actually looking out for the average man in America is so ironic and tragic.
You know, for me, I get his supporters who want to deny stories like the claim that he called, our veterans suckers and losers because they didn't hear it with their own ears. They didn't hear Trump say it for himself. But in this case, you hear it from the horse's mouth, and the lack of empathy and the real reason why he was upset with Epstein, I think is telling. The fact that we still are not getting the Epstein files that were promised to the American people. By the way, forget the American people, that were promised to Trump's base in particular, I think is telling. And I do care about this. There are people who think it's a distraction. I totally disagree. When we have a situation in which we're now learning that there were 4 co-conspirators to what Epstein did, and they were never prosecuted, we don't know who they are, that's a problem. Who are those people? Why is it that we're not gonna ever get any justice for all of those young girls who were abused?
And Anna, I would say that it goes even deeper than that.
It does.
Because if they're trying to brush it aside, it's possible that they actually mean it and they think like Kevin O'Leary, like the only thing that matters in the world is the stock market. I don't care about anything else that happens, right? So there are people like that are one issue people like that. But generally speaking, the folks who say let's move on are the ones that have an agenda in saying that, right? But for the rest of us, do we have any faith in our own government?
Exactly.
That's why this issue is so central. Not because of the crime which is horrific and historic in its own right, but because it's so obvious that our government is lying to us and rubbing it in our face.
Exactly.
So we lose faith in all of our institutions if we can't get the bare minimum. Who ran this giant pedophile ring that is out in the open and public, which there are hundreds of victims that we know about? If you tell us it didn't exist, then we're living in 1984. George Orwell was right about everything. That the state told you that to ignore the dictates, that what you see with your eyes and ears, right? And that was their most important dictate. That you believe the nonsense that this despicable government tells you, and then has the media trot out and go, no, everybody bow their heads. There's nothing to see here. Those girls raped themselves. Shut up and stop asking questions. Well, we're not going to. It goes to the core of whether we live in a democracy.
When we come back from the break, we're going to revisit that doctored video that was released by the Trump DOJ purporting to show the prison where Jeffrey Epstein allegedly committed suicide. There are some new statements coming from the Trump administration. We're going to share what those statements are and more when we come back.
All right, back on TYT, guys. If you want to keep up with the show, just ring the bell. It's easy, free, available for everybody. Catch Weekends with Cenk by ringing the bell. Funkin' for Fun says, these guys are literally worse than the evil corporate monsters in 80s movies. Yeah, they're way over the top, man. You put them in a B-rate movie, you wouldn't believe it. I've said that before, not just about Idiocracy, which is a comedy, but about Machete, which was an interesting, different kind of hybrid comedy. And Machete was so over the top at the time, and now feels like they undersold it. We're in an alternate timeline that is not a positive one. Anyway, Wang John says, I have a feeling they fell out because Trump found out about the hidden cameras. By the way, that is also possible. So
why were there hidden cameras, Cenk? That's weird.
No, there is nothing to see here, Anna. The hidden cameras don't mean anything at all. They are very normal when people are having sex or getting massages or are naked. There are always hidden cameras, so that is why you should stop asking questions. The one camera that was not working was the one in the hallway in front of Jeffrey Epstein's cell. But we are the government. You should be a moron and believe us. Oh, right, everyone in media did.
I just look, I just have one ask, okay? And I don't know if the people who are thinking about being future politicians and leaders in this country are watching right now, but if you are, if you're considering it, if you happen to be a pedophile, maybe sit it out. Okay, I'd like to have politicians and political leaders who aren't easy to blackmail. Go ahead, Cenk.
Seems like a fair ask.
Yeah.
Dots Plot says, OMG, yes, thanks, Anna. I haven't heard you talk about the birds for a minute. I like the birds too. Randomly, there's like a birdophilia community here.
They're the best.
Okay.
They're dinosaurs, they're amazing.
That is yeah. Oh, there's some truth. Yes. Octo Squiddy says Trump's a worse liar than a toddler. I often think the same thing. Trump's womanly ass, that's hilarious, says the only thing Trump has never been able to fake is empathy.
That's a good point.
Yep. TYT Rocking says, I ran track and field. I have a couple of stories. I started out one Sunday for a run, warmed up quickly. At 2 miles, I started sprinting. And at 4 miles, I was flying and fully warm. So this is another community that Anna's bringing here. That's a YouTube member. Like the runner high community.
No, but runner's high is real. Some people who have been running their whole lives have never experienced it. And I feel so bad for them because it really is the best feeling ever. And you're not on drugs, you're actually doing something good for your body and you feel high doing it, it's great. Yeah,
I've run so many times and for so long, never gotten runner's high. Best feeling is marijuana. All right, anyway, Crystal Sheets writes in, Trump supporters say he's not on the list because if he were, the Dems would have released them. Unless that they were involved in an intelligence agency told them not to, right? In which case they would never release them. So that's why that's the one that makes the most logical sense to me. Obsidian Bloodline Forever writes in, oh, this is long. Bangladeshi American cop dies as a hero protecting New Yorkers, and these two thumb-shaped patriots, Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro, still can't stop drooling about immigrants ruining America. Funny how these racist bigot men who've never risked a paper cut for this country feel bold mocking the people who who actually die for it. Two cowardly podcasters hiding behind microphones, terrified of anyone braver, smarter, or browner than them. They are just exposing themselves as more antichrist. I don't know that I go as far as antichrist, but it is hard not to get frustrated with them, especially as turns out the cop who died was, of course, a Muslim American. All right, we'll be right back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna, and also Crimson Cow. That's such a fun handle. Thanks for being part of the TYT community and allowing us to do this show for you. Casper.
All right, well, we're gonna revisit something that the government attempted to lie to us about, and they're not making the situation any better for themselves. So let's get into it.
Earlier this month, the Justice Department released nearly 11 hours of surveillance footage from outside Epstein's cell. Now, just before midnight, the time code jumped forward on the screen. A government source now alleges the government has a copy of that video that includes that minute, but it's still unclear why the section was missing when the video was first released.
Well, earlier this month, when the Trump administration released what they claim to be raw video footage inside the prison where Jeffrey Epstein was being held, Attorney General Pam Bondi insisted that there was a legitimate reason why there was a minute missing from the video that they released to the public. But according to CBS, the government may have had their hands on that missing footage this entire time. And I don't know, Cenk, are you shocked by that revelation?
What I'm amazed by is that they thought they could get away with it. Isn't that amazing? And so we were talking this morning, we used to cover these stories by the politicians, like Mitt Romney would do it all the time, where he'd tell two different crowds, two completely different stories. And they didn't get used to the fact, and we would say back then, like 2011, 2012, do you not know YouTube exists? Those events were taped and they're gonna go on a thing called YouTube and we're gonna be able to put them together. And their answer was, yeah, they didn't know. They were living in the 1980s and 90s. Well, all of them are so freaking old. Yeah. So the government here is used to, we do an outrageous lie. Mainstream media says it's the official story and everybody moves on. You're not getting it, brothers and sisters. Nobody gives a damn what mainstream media says now. Online media is so strong and overwhelming. You think we weren't gonna catch you on the missing part of the tape?
Right.
You're nuts.
Absolutely
bunch of
nuts.
Incompetent fools.
One of the sloppiest cover-ups in American history, and there have been quite a few cover-ups. But anyway, let's get to the details here. So in the video, so here it is, you're watching it. In this video, you can see the time code on the screen jumped forward 1 minute just before midnight, which was strange. Online sleuths noticed it. So there you go. And when the suspicious jump was called out, Pam Bondi decided to give an explanation. There's an explanation for this. So let's hear what it was.
There was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every year, every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night. And that's it on Epstein.
That video's from 1999. Is she saying the surveillance system is from 1999? And does a maximum security prison that has this guy on suicide watch really use a surveillance system that dates back to the 1990s? Really? I mean, I think that's insane, and I'm not the only one, by the way, because this is looking even fishier. A government source familiar with the investigation says the FBI, the Bureau of Prisons, and the Department of Justice Inspector General are all in possession of a copy of the video that does not cut from just before 11:59 p.m. to midnight of the night Epstein died.
But I thought it didn't even exist. She said that every video, that minute is cut out.
Right.
And then she said, we're looking into it. And that was like a month ago. So where's all the minutes? So she's not even trying to make sense. And I'm telling you, they just thought, because they're generally right. Like even in the middle of this, back then, when you said there's a minute missing, mainstream media was like, is that conspiratorial? It's right there in front of your eyes.
It's right in front of your eyes. The source didn't say what was on that missing footage or why it was even removed. And by the way, this person spoke to CBS News on condition of anonymity. I need to know more, right? Like, there's so much that's being kept from the American people, different narratives. Obviously, that video that was released by the Trump Justice Department was doctored. Why was it doctored? But this reporting is fairly consistent with other things that we've learned about the footage, right? So for one, in response to Bondi's claim that the missing minute could be explained by the camera system, experts in surveillance video, including video forensic professionals, told CBS News that a nightly reset would have been unusual and was not something they encountered in most video systems. I gotta give her credit though for being creative in her cover story here, right? Like, how stupid is that cover story though, seriously? Like, oh, we have a surveillance system in this prison and not a big deal, just, it skips an entire minute, like an entire minute. So like, what's the point of having a surveillance system when you know that there's like this loophole where bad things can happen in a minute and people get away with it?
Yeah, and so what's so frustrating about mainstream media is, look, this is CBS News, it's a really good story, right? So every once in a while they do these really good stories and you find out a little bit more. And then the very next day, they all have collective instant amnesia and will call everything related to Epstein's story conspiracy theories.
Can I give you more details? Because there's more insane details here. So for instance, experts also say that it's clear that a version of the recording released by the FBI was in fact edited and not raw as they had originally claimed. They meaning, the Trump administration. Jim Stafford was one of several video forensic analysts who looked at the video's metadata. Listen, Pam, you're the Attorney General. You have to know what metadata is. That's how people are able to determine whether or not you were messing around with the footage, whether or not the footage is actually the raw footage or not. But Jim Stafford said that the metadata showed that the file was first created on May 23rd of this year, and that it was likely a screen capture, not an actual export of the raw file. He said the metadata showed that the video was in fact 2 separate videos stitched together. It was also slightly sped up, so the video covering 11 hours runs approximately 10 hours and 53 minutes in length. And by the way, as we had reported on earlier, Wired had reported on July 15th that in fact there was more than 1 minute missing, okay? So here's the author of that article. The author is Dhruv Mehrotra. Let's take a look.
The quote unquote raw video was actually stitched together from 2 separate clips and exported multiple times over more than 3 hours on a single day in May. When we looked at the metadata from the source clips, we found that 2 minutes and 53 seconds were removed from one of the original files that they used. And that cut happens actually right before the now infamous missing minute, which is like a gap in footage that occurred from 11:59 p.m. on August 9th to midnight the following morning. And this doesn't just really undercut the claim that the DOJ has made that this video is raw and unedited, but it also potentially contradicts the DOJ's explanation that the missing minute was due to a routine system reset. Because based on the original file that we're looking at, there appears to be footage that could cover the time frame in question.
Okay, so now you have the full picture. And CBS asked the FBI and the Justice Department for a response to this claim from a government worker who's apparently knowledgeable about all of this, about their claims that the government is in fact in possession of the full footage, but they declined to comment. The Bureau of Prisons, though, said that they had no additional information to provide. And the final thing that I'll say about this that I find a little strange is, Dan Bongino just this past weekend on Saturday posted a pretty cryptic statement on X. Now, of course, he's the deputy FBI director, and he said, during my tenure here as the deputy director of the FBI, I've repeatedly relayed to you that things are happening that might not be immediately visible, but they are happening. The director and I are committed to stamping out public corruption and the political weaponization of both law enforcement and intelligence operations. It is a priority for us. But what I have learned in the course of our properly predicated and necessary investigations into these aforementioned matters has shocked me down to my core. We cannot run a republic like this. I'll never be the same after learning what I've learned. So that was, you took a giant can of gasoline and just squirted it all over the fire. Because what does that mean? What was meant by that cryptic statement?
Yeah.
Like, it's just, this is crazy.
And there's two possibilities there, right? So one is that Bongino is basically, when he comes out of the administration, is gonna tell us what he learned.
I hope.
Because he's too embarrassed, his career will be over if he comes out and goes, oh, nothing happened, there was no clients and there was no file and the girls raped themselves, right? Like it's over for him, right? So he might be saying, hey, don't worry. I know you all hate me now, but I'm gonna tell you later, okay? Or the more likely possibility is, oh my God, I found out that the Democrats are really evil. And I will be telling you about how shocking that is, but don't ask about Epstein. Don't ask about Epstein. The Democrats have shocked me to my core. So if they do that, he does that kind of BS maneuver. Yeah, of course, some schmucks and MAGA will fall for it, right? Some percentage of them will fall for anything, which I'm gonna come back to in a second. But a lot of them will be like, really, brother? So there was nothing in the Epstein files, but golly gee, you found two things about Democrats, and that's the thing that shocked you.
Yeah.
So I don't know which one it is, but if he tries that BS, I don't think it's gonna fly at all. It might fly with some right-wing shows, but it's not gonna fly with the podcasters and the independent shows who are gonna laugh him out of the building.
By the way, I would feel the same way if we had a Democratic administration in the position that the Trump administration is currently in right now. If they just want to chalk this up to some sort of partisan scandal, I'm not buying it. For me, this is not a partisan story. I mean, look, as we know, Jeffrey Epstein ran around with politicians from both sides of the political aisle. I don't see this as a partisan issue. If you're obsessed with making one side look bad by exploiting this story, I'm very suspicious of you. Because again, as Cenk had mentioned earlier, and I totally agree with this, I think this story actually goes much deeper than partisan politics, much deeper.
Yeah.
Okay, it has to do with injustice, it has to do with a cover up, it has to do with our government and our institutions lying to the American people. It has to do with a possible blackmail operation. It's potentially carried out by foreign governments in order to get our politicians to serve their interests as opposed to America's interests. This is a big problem. So don't let anyone make you think this is all about partisanship, because that's a complete and utter lie. It's, again, much deeper than that.
There's the reason why I hold out some hope that Bongino is actually talking about the Epstein files and might say some things when he leaves, is because he gratuitously threw in intelligence agencies. Because the FBI is internal, inside America. Intelligence agencies are supposed to be working outside America, right? So why is the deputy director at the FBI talking about the intelligence agencies and how things he's seen has shocked him to his core? So that might be a hint there. But we're reading tea leaves because nobody will ever tell you the truth from the government. Which then leads me back to the point that I wanted to make about them. You know, you ever seen that movie, and I always forget the title of it, Bart will know, but the Batman movie that Bane was in, right? That I actually loved. And Bane has a great line to Batman there. He said, victory has defeated you. And that is what has happened with government cover-ups. They've gotten away with so many preposterous government cover-ups. Oh yeah, Lee Harvey Oswald shot JFK from the state of Maine, and it was one bullet that traveled in 17 directions and hit him. But trust us, bro, right? Since all of those things worked with a very compliant media, now they're like, yeah, sure, there's a missing minute in every prison tape. Yeah, we'll get it to you later, brother. We're working around the clock. But also the same thing goes for the Trump team. So they really got the sense that Trump could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. That their own followers would believe every single lie, no matter how preposterous. So when they're not believing the lies about Epstein, they're kind of shell-shocked. They're like, what? We already gave you an excuse.
Why won't this go away?
Right, we already told you MAGA people to scoot. We gave you a stupid excuse and you're still not biting on it? Victory has defeated them. Like they got so complacent about it. And then finally, guys, the entire conversation is nonsense to begin with. That's not the hallway. That's a common area.
I know.
It's almost a totally random tape. Oh, well, no, Epstein was not killed. You can see from this video recording we have of a strip mall in Paramus. What does that have to do with anything? The hallway is where they would have entered his cell. And they say, Oh, golly gee, the hallway camera's entirely not working. But in every prison, the hallway camera of the most important prisoner and the worst pedophile in American history never works. Oh, okay, if you say so. No, don't lose track of the fact that you're looking at the wrong tape to begin with.
That's a great point. All right, we unfortunately have to take another break, but when we come back for hour 2, I want to revisit the ongoing famine in Gaza, the claims by the Israeli government in regard to allowing the flow of aid into the Gaza Strip and more. Don't miss it, we'll be right back.
Every day, the Young Turks delivers 2 hours of solid, fact-based, timely news and progressive commentary on all the day's most important stories. We keep our viewers informed while also providing perspective and insight on the news we cover, so you understand not only what's happening, but also what's happening behind the scenes, the stories behind the stories.
We play musical chairs and put these children in one awful detention facility to the next. That's what's happening at the border.
The things that got him banned, he's still spreading. So presumably, I think it's reasonable to say that if you allow him back on the website, he's going to do it again.
Any legal voter that we deem not willing to vote for my side shouldn't vote because it'll replace me that's supposed to vote for my side. That's not how voting works. That's not how democracy works.
And while many people following today's political news can get discouraged about the direction of the nation and the world, that's not us. At TYT, we're genuinely optimistic about the future, and with good reason. Today, wide majorities of Americans agree with our progressive stances on issues ranging from healthcare and education to climate, immigration, and wages. The rising generation of young people are also overwhelmingly progressive in their political beliefs and policy objectives, and they're increasingly flexing their muscle as voters and activists to demand change from our elected officials. The traditional mainstream media is mostly AWOL. They, along with the government and many other cherished institutions, have been captured by corporate interests. Audiences sense that they're not getting the whole story or even the truth from once trusted outlets, whether broadcast and cable TV news networks or national newspapers and magazines. The antidote is the Young Turks. Unlike mainstream corporate outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to Big Pharma, and we don't carry water for the Republican or Democratic parties. So watch us Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, and join the thousands of progressives around the globe who tune in every day for TYT's unmatched, award-winning content and see what it's like to experience a news organization that only answers to you.
Indisputable, exclusive. Exclusive, disputable, exclusive. We brought you this first. No other news agency has this video. No other news agency has this story.
Every week on Indisputable, we do original, exclusive, investigative reporting you'll find nowhere else.
Our reports have been viewed by millions. Hosted by Sean King, Ben Crump, Senator John Ossoff.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
We catching these cases on camera. Just imagine the things that we don't see.
Our groundbreaking investigations and exclusive interviews bring you the real voices no one else wants you to hear. We tell the stories.
Imagine a prison that is so racist, the corrections officers contact me. That is a life or death situation being created. A black woman who was driving for Uber was allegedly assaulted by a white male passenger. After we got involved, roughly 24 hours later, the police all of a sudden opened up an investigation. What was going through your mind when bullets were simply flying inside of your vehicle?
Honestly, I thought I was going to die.
Did these officers ever say that you fit the description of somebody they were looking for? Did they say that?
Never.
Okay, that means they lied.
And we want you to be part of our truth-telling movement. Send pictures and video of stories no one else is telling and a 1 or 2 paragraph summary of the story to Indisputable's exclusive tip line at indvideos@tyt.com.
If you have more information about what's happening at this particular facility, please let me know.
Together, we're challenging the system, and together, we're making a difference.
I have the entire background to this story, and it is going to make your blood boil.
Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, unveiling the truth, empowering the people. Weekdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific.
All right, back on TYT Jenkadana with you guys. And also Melody Loves Music. Thank you for gifting 5 memberships on YouTube. On Twitch, Century22 said, props to Jenk for any and all Paramus references.
For real.
And then to your runner's high point, combined with mine, Stellar Wingman said, if I run to the dispensary, then I can get the runner's high.
It's a different form, but I hear what you're saying, yes.
Okay, all right, what's next?
All right, well, I wanted to check in on not only what's happening in Gaza with this very intentional starvation campaign, but what others in the media space have been saying about it. Without further ado, let's get into it.
Obviously, I am a human and want to live, but our civilization does really deserve to be destroyed. If there was ever a civilization that deserved a cataclysmic, and again, not rooting for it, don't want it to happen. Don't want it to happen. But just statistically, I mean, could there be a better example? Nobody is fatter than us. We are now funding the starvation of a group of people halfway across the world, or all the way across the world. I'm bad with geography, but far away. And if you bring it up, or if you chat about it, or if you talk about it, you're immediately called anti-Semitic or whatever, and it's completely absurd and insane.
Which is why it's important to take the power away from those ridiculous false allegations and speak out against the famine, the very intentional man-made famine in Gaza as we speak. Now, as you heard, Tim Dillon, like any human being with a pulse and a conscience, is now questioning the value of human civilization given the unmitigated slaughter of Palestinians and destruction of Gaza, paid for by the fine people of the United States, not because they want to, but because they're literally forced to by our government. And with now hundreds of Palestinians dead as a result of intentional starvation, Dillon really isn't pulling any punches. Take a look.
I mean, this guy is committing a genocide. Like, I know that like people are like, well, yes, they're starving Gaza, but did you see that video of that guy from Hamas stealing a banana? Did you see that? There's a guy from Hamas eating a banana, and people are like, well, he stole the banana from the people. And they're like, Hamas is stealing the food. In this whole thing, Israel has no culpability, by the way, at all. They've actually done nothing wrong. It's all been Hamas. Hamas has done everything. And you have to trust Israel, because otherwise the only people that are reporting out of Gaza, they're not letting journalists in, or they just say are Hamas. So if you report anything contrary to what Israel says, you are Hamas, or you become Hamas. For the fattest country in the world to fund the starvation of a group of people is insane.
And he's not the only comedian who finds this to be insane. Of course, there are also many other commentators who find it insane. But Jon Stewart seems to agree as well, saying on a recent episode of The Daily Show, quote, I feel like a crazy person. I feel like I'm watching something that is so self-evidently inhumane and horrific, and to be told that I have to shut up because I risk the Jewish state by speaking out, I would say the opposite. I think they're putting the likelihood of a surviving Jewish state much more at risk with this type of action. I think they're the ones that are being anti-Semitic. If you want to define Netanyahu's definition of anti-Semitism, would be he'd probably have to bomb himself. Look, this whole slaughter campaign that has played out in Gaza, and is also, by the way, playing out to some extent in the West Bank as Israel attempts to annex that land for themselves, it's all been very illuminating for me. Right, because if you've kind of grown up in a political space where you see everything through a partisan lens, well, that partisan lens is just totally broken apart the second you notice that on both sides of the political aisle, you have folks who totally justify what's happening in Gaza. But also, something that makes me pretty happy is when it comes to voters, you see people on both sides of the political aisle speaking up and speaking out about what's taking place, calling out the injustice, wanting to take the Trump administration to task, even if they voted for Donald Trump. And those are the people who give me hope. Okay, honestly, when it comes to this issue, partisanship isn't really a good indicator of who's good or bad at all. There's plenty of scum on both sides, but there's also plenty of great people, good voters, who are on the right side of history on this issue.
Yeah, so I think that Jon Stewart and Tim Dillon / Theo Vaughn are a perfect 1-2 punch on this issue, okay? So I'm gonna come back to Tim Dillon in a second. But first on Jon Stewart and Peter Beinart conversation, I watched the whole interview. Please watch the whole interview. It was picture perfect. I agreed with every single word spoken, right? And by the way, so they're both Jewish. Beinart wrote a book about it. We'll try to get him on the show. He's not just kind and decent person, but he's really bright, right? He's got both the things you want. And his moral compass is so excellent. And what he explained on the show was, he said, look guys, the people trying to stop this genocide are getting smeared by Israel's supporters. But those are the exact kind of people that would have helped us during the Holocaust. They're the ones who would have been brave enough to say, as no one said anything across the world, my God, what are you doing? What are you doing? I'm morally outraged. You have to go help the Jews in the middle of the Holocaust. Now for us to say, those same people trying to stop this genocide are the hateful ones. Oh, he's like, we're doing great damage. We're doing great damage to our cause, to Israel, to everything, to humanity, and to honoring the memory of the Holocaust. It was really powerful. I don't want to put too many words in their mouth. Please watch it yourself as well. And Stewart was, as always, brilliant, perfect, right? And look, John, and it looks like Peter too, are the exact kind of Jewish tradition and culture that I grew up in and that I love. And what I mean by that is I'm not Jewish, but I grew up in a town that was about 50% Jewish. And that's the Jewish tradition and culture that I always heard about and that I was exposed to. You question the rabbi, you try to educate yourself, you look at yourself first. All of these positive things that they talked about, right? That exists and very strongly among Jewish Americans. And so what they were doing was challenging fellow Jewish Americans and saying, guys, wait, first of all, this is unconscionable. You can't say it's okay. If you say it's okay, it's beyond the pale. You can't do that. And then secondly, Jon Stewart's point was brilliant. He said, wait a minute, if you're saying basically that if you're not pro-genocide, you're anti-Semitic, you're making it seem like Jews are pro-genocide.
Exactly.
He's like, that's anti-Semitic.
It's the total defamation of Jews across the globe, and it disgusts me. Do not conflate the Jewish people with the far-right terrorist regime that's currently governing Israel. Okay, just don't do it, don't do it. Don't be dumb in falling for that trap because it's stupid and it's inaccurate. There are so many Jewish people around the world, including here in the United States, who are vociferously protesting what Israel is doing. Okay, some of the best voices on this issue happen to be American Jews. Okay, Dave Smith, Glenn Greenwald, I think he's in Brazil, not in the United States, but you get the point. Okay.
Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders, Norm Finkelstein. There's
Mandy
so
Patinkin,
many.
Rick Jacobs, the rabbi of the largest Jewish denomination in America. The Omer Bartov, the Holocaust historian who's Israeli American.
Yes.
And the list goes on and on and on. But unfortunately, there's very powerful people on the side of just supporting Israel and not Jewish Americans and not Jews across the world. And they are doing massive damage all over media.
So I want to give you an update on what's happening in Gaza right now as it pertains to this famine. And anyone who is furious about this is, again, on the right side of history and correct. So at least 147 people have died of malnutrition, according to Gaza's health ministry, including 88 children. The number is almost twice as high as it was a month earlier, meaning that this is now a full-blown famine. People are literally starving to death. And the situation is dire. There's been so much backlash that Israel apparently feels some pressure to ease up on their obvious blockade of aid entering the Gaza Strip. Now, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation only had 4 distribution sites in the entirety of the Gaza Strip, whereas UNRWA had hundreds. And of course, UNRWA was smeared and defamed by the Israeli government as a bunch of Hamas militants. So their operations were banned or severely restricted. Now, they were all intentionally, by the way, the aid sites for the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. All of those sites were located in active combat zones and were barricaded by razor wire, which, by the way, is a violation of the Geneva Convention. But I mean, does anyone think that international law or rules pertaining to war crimes even matter at this point? I mean, the United States aided and abetted the complete dismantling of international laws. How is anyone going to take the United States seriously when they point to any other country engaging in war crimes when we have glazed Israel and provided cover for their war crimes time and time again? Now, Israel said it would ease some of the restrictions in place on allowing aid for the Gazan population. More trucks would be able to enter, secure corridors for their movement would be created, and fighting would pause for 10 hours a day in 3 major population centers to help with distribution. But the Israeli military has actually told the United Nations something entirely different. They claim that this will only be enacted for 1 week, which obviously is not enough considering there's now a famine in Gaza. But publicly, the IDF has changed its story to say that these tactical pauses would last until further notice. I don't trust the IDF. They have shown themselves to be liars, including, by the way, the Israeli government over and over again. You should never take anything they say at face value. Now, the UN World Food Program also says that they're actually still not being allowed to get the necessary volumes of humanitarian aid into Gaza. At a briefing in Geneva, for instance, the senior regional program advisor for the World Food Program said that, quote, "We have not gotten the authorization, the permission to move in the volumes that we've requested." And look, to really get a sense of how insufficient the distribution of aid in Gaza has been, especially at the hands of this, Israeli and US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is essentially a private company funded by US taxpayers to the tune of $60 million. Here's what retired US soldier Anthony Aguilar witnessed for himself when he thought that he was participating in a noble cause and realized it was anything but. Take a look.
The sites have not only become death traps, they were designed as death traps. All 4 distribution locations were intentionally, deliberately constructed, planned, and built in the middle of an active combat zone. We've been distributing aid since the 26th of May. So out of 64 days, we've provided 14 days of meals to the entire population in the enclave of Gaza. That's inhumane. That would be like saying that you only eat every 4th day. You only eat on Thursday and you only eat on Monday. Instead of giving the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation $60 million, use that $60 million to support the United Nations mechanism to get 400 sites back to operating, to feed 2.1 million people every day. That was the capacity of the United Nations.
Just makes me sick that the US is backing this. Now, the Wall Street Journal has done some reporting on this as well, and they put together this graph that I wanted to share with you because I think it helps the audience, visualize what the reality is. Food supplies in Gaza have dwindled under the new Israeli aid plan, meaning, the distribution through the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. So this chart from the Wall Street Journal demonstrates the dramatic reduction in aid to Gaza after Israel decided to accuse the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, also known as UNRWA, of being Hamas terrorists. Their operations were barred or severely restricted following these allegations, and aid deliveries under the UN coordinated system amounted to 295,120 tons, but that number dropped down to just 38,252 tons after UNRWA was essentially replaced by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Now, an area is classified as in famine when it meets 3 conditions. The IPC explained. At least 1 in 3 children are acutely malnourished, 1 in 5 people are suffering extreme food shortages, and 2 in every 10,000 people are dying daily from starvation or malnutrition and disease. Based on the latest data, 2 famine thresholds have been passed, according to the IPC.
Yeah, so first of all, that chart shows you genocidal intent. that is purposely starving them. They were not getting a lot of food when the bars you're looking at seem high compared to what they're getting today. So they're getting next to nothing today, and that's why 147 have already starved to death. Do you know how much like starving people to death takes a long time. You have to be brutal for months at a time so that they just can't get any food at all. By the way, baby formula is totally impossible to get in Gaza.
They're blocking it. They're literally blocking it. The IDF is blocking baby formula from entering the Gaza Strip. Why? Why would they want to do that? What's the intent there? What's the justification for that? At some point, those who want to defend what the IDF is doing really need to take a good hard look in the mirror and ask themselves who they want to be in life. Do they want to justify the slaughter of children, the intentional slaughter of children? Or do they want to be decent people who see this for what it really is and call it out? Be a decent human being. This isn't difficult.
And by the way, also don't hide behind your religion, because there's Peter Beinart and Jon Stewart saying, this isn't my religion, this is the opposite of my religion, right? So don't tell me that my religion made you do this. My religion didn't ask you to do this. Your despicable terrorist government is doing this. If you're starving the people to death, you are a terrorist and you are a fascist. That's not hard. If it was being done to Jews, there's not a person in the world who wouldn't call that government a terrorist government and a fascist government. So just stop hiding behind religion. All right, I want to get back to Tim Dillon in a second. But one last thing about the Green Beret that we showed you, Aguilar there. He also told a harrowing story of this young boy who came up and asked them for food. They were out of food, so he couldn't give it to them, but he'd already gotten some earlier. He was just seeing, and they all get a tiny, tiny amount. And the kid's skin and bones, according to Aguilar. And he said, I'm sorry, I don't have any. The kid, of course, just says thank you in Arabic, right? And he said thank you. The kid said thank you, even though we're starving them to death. A minute later, as they were walking away, the IDF killed them. So if that doesn't bother you guys, there's something missing. You lost the thread at some point.
Yeah, you're a sociopath.
Like that's sociopathic bias, right? And I know, like ethnic bias will do that to you. There's.
No, look. I got to be honest with you. No,
Anna, I know it. Like there's Turks who are good people, but the minute you ask them about the Armenian genocide, they'll say no way, didn't happen, totally fictional, and they'll get enraged about it. And they're lovely people otherwise.
I get it.
By the way, also Japanese about the rape of Nanking, and on it goes.
I know, Cenk, and I get that, especially in the context of propaganda that has basically continued over the last century in regard to that genocide. But you can't deny what's being streamed in real time in front of your face as we speak. It's happening now. It's happening now.
Yes, and that's exactly what Jon Stewart said as well. He's like, you're being ridiculous, we all see it. Why do you think we don't see it? It's just maddening. Last thing is back to Dillon. I think he's getting at something that's really important, and that's why Israel is now making a huge mistake. He's saying, look guys, when we're saying please stop the genocide, please stop starving these children, Israel is telling us we're the bad guys. We hate Jews, that's why we don't want to starve children. No, I'm done with you telling me I'm the bad guy for wanting to save lives.
I was done on day one.
Yeah, and so somebody, one of our members wrote in saying, hey guys, you've been saying this from day one. These guys are catching up to you. God bless, I want them to catch up. I don't mind, I don't care about the credit. So yes, it took them way too long, but to be fair, it's not on them. Mainstream media was terrible. Dillon and Jon Stewart have been way better throughout, right? But the core of what Dillon is saying is Israel isn't getting. When they are now telling everyone, you're a bad person if you're not in favor of funding our genocide, it's making people angry. No, it makes every decent human being want to say, no, F you, I'm not the bad guy, you're the bad guy. And people are finally beginning to figure out that Israel might not be the victim. I mean, that's so obvious to the rest of the world. But if you don't live in America, the propaganda here is so overwhelming. Israel can do the most horrific things, and American media will tell you they're the victim. They're the victim. So that spell is breaking, and now people are going, no, they're not the victim. And now it's becoming obvious they're the villain. And if that's where you think Israel is in a better spot, you're nuts.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, is AIPAC still supporting and endorsing the likes of people like Randy Fine? Well, we've got the answer for you when we come back.
All right, guys, let's go to our members on tyt.com. Irish Fiddle Dragon says this business in Gaza is evil. I rarely use that word, but this is the very definition of evil. Well, look, if this isn't evil, I don't know what evil is, right? I mean, if starving children to death isn't evil, there is no such thing as evil. So soon people are gonna start to ask, you know, they do about baby Hitler. What would you do with baby Hitler? You're gonna ask that about Netanyahu and Ben-Gvir and Smotrich. They're deeply evil people. All three of them have called for total annihilation in Gaza. Netanyahu has said it in more bleak ways, although very clear with reference to Amalek and Greater Israel, etc. Smotrich and Ben-Gvir have flat out said it. Kill them all, starve them all, etc. That is what Nazis say, period. And so like the idea that people who get offended at criticism of Israel are ascendant, that's been the case my whole life. Like if you criticize Israel at all, that's it, you're a terrible person, you should be banned from everything. Those guys are not in charge anymore, okay? And from time to time, and they could do damage, etc. But when they say, no, you are all anti-Semites, they're getting this giant middle finger now getting assembled in America to turn back on them. No, we're not the bad guys. The people doing this evil acts are the bad guys. You call us bad guys one more time. So look, we didn't get to
Why would anyone, by the way, care about the value judgment of Nazis? I don't care about your value judgment, okay? F off. I don't care at all. You can call me whatever name you want. My moral compass is clear, okay?
And your moral compass is obviously not clear. Super obvious. Again, the entire world knows it, other than you, the Israeli supporters who think they're the holiest people on earth. Jesus, how blind do you have to be? All Woodsman 53 says, last Friday over 10,000 Israelis protested in northern Arab Israeli city of Saknin against the war in Gaza and the starvation. Thank you to all those wonderful people in Israel that are fighting back and are the good Israelis, like they were the good Germans. Old Dirty Pastor says, okay, Tim Dillon, you're speaking my language. Might have to check this guy out every once in a while.
I listen to his podcast regularly now, and I don't have to agree with him on everything. Because look, at the end of the day, he is right on this issue. So I know that he's a good person. So if we have political disagreements here and there, who cares? Okay, who cares? He's right on the issue that, in my opinion, at this moment, absolutely matters the most, because we're funding this, guys. We're funding this, and it's unacceptable. Anyway, and so many celebrities, the freaking Kardashians, coming out here supporting Israel, they disgust me. They should be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah,
especially as Armenians who know their own history. They're so gross. Anyway, go ahead, Jane.
Cardo Dragon says 100% way to get Trump to admit is by telling him, you know, you didn't get to go to Epstein Island because he only invited the rich and the powerful people, and you didn't make the cut. By the way, that is genius. And if you said that to Trump, he would say, oh yeah? In fact, not only that, Trump said the other day, I didn't have the privilege of going to Epstein Island. He literally said it. Why would you call that a privilege? Like now, why?
I don't get it.
Because that's how he thinks. Back on TYT, Jang and Anna with you guys, and Tuppy. Thank you for joining, Tuppy. Anna.
All right, well, we got to talk about this grotesque creature that unfortunately exists in the political world here in the United States. Let's get into it.
Congressman, how do you sleep at night?
I sleep great.
There are 2 million people being starved in Gaza.
Ilhan Omar is not pro-America, and frankly, she endorses and supports Muslim terror. We nuked the Japanese twice in order to get unconditional surrender. That needs to be the same here. There is something deeply, deeply wrong with this culture, and it needs to be defeated.
Those grotesque statements were uttered by Republican Congressman Randy Fine, arguably one of the most depraved members of the United States Congress. So depraved, in fact, that for a hot second, people thought that even AIPAC, the Israel lobby, the powerful pro-Israel lobbying group, saw him as too much of a liability to continue endorsing. Turns out that's probably not true, though. So we'll get to that in just a second. But last week, as reports of starvation in Gaza started to pick up, this genocidal maniac posted the following messages. Release the hostages, until then, starve away. This is all a lie anyway. It amazes me that the media continues to regurgitate Muslim terror propaganda. Except no one is regurgitating Muslim terror propaganda. We have eyes, we have ears, and we can literally see the starving children in Gaza. We can see it. Okay, maybe he's blind. I don't think he is. I think he's pretending to be, but we all see it. The children who have been reduced to skin and bones, the 147 Palestinians who have died of starvation, 88 of them being children. The only terrorist that I see here, or terrorist sympathizer that I see in this whole equation, is unfortunately the United States congressman that we're hearing from. But here's more. He says there is no starvation. Everything about the Palestinian cause is a lie. I'd like to see him go 24 hours without eating.
Yeah, put Randy Fine in Gaza for 24 hours and watch that pig squeal. I've got a lot more thoughts about that terrorist in a minute.
So then yesterday, AIPAC appeared to drop their endorsement of Randy Fine, which made some think, oh wow, maybe even AIPAC has, some morality. The group endorsed him, by the way, ahead of his House race earlier this year and poured more than $126,000 into his campaign. But his name was no longer coming up in their database of endorsed candidates on Monday evening, right? So that made people think, oh, maybe AIPAC no longer wants to endorse him. Maybe they see his public statements as too much of a liability and they want to distance themselves. Now, in response to the Times of Israel's report about this, AIPAC actually shot back, writing on X, this reporting is based on an unsourced speculative piece. We will be endorsing candidates for the 2026 election throughout the cycle. Current endorsees for 2026 so far are listed on the AIPAC website. As Representative Fine was elected only in April, consideration of his endorsement will take place later in the cycle, as is the case with many other freshman members of Congress. So in other words, if you made the mistake of thinking the fine people over at AIPAC think that Randy Fine's disgusting, grotesque statements are a bridge too far, don't make that mistake again, because AIPAC has shown what they're willing to support, what they're willing to back, as long as it provides cover for the state of Israel. Now, there are people who are not fine with these statements coming from Randy Fine or the fact that he's been cheering on the starvation of the Palestinian people. And believe it or not, one of those people happens to be Marjorie Taylor Greene. And I'm gonna read you her statement in just a minute, but before I do, Cenk, weigh in.
Yeah, so look, I get that people funded AIPAC, American citizens that love Israel funded it for a long, long time. And a lot of them know what it's up to, but tons of them don't really know any of the details, don't fully know. They just think I'm supporting Israel and Israel's a wonderful place, etc. Right? That was the past. Now, I don't really think that that's true in 1,000 different ways, but I understand that that's what they thought, right? But now the jury's in. Now you all know AIPAC is funding people like Randy Fine, who say that a genocide is not good enough. We might have to drop nukes in a tiny little area. It's the size of Las Vegas. Actually, now they're scrunched into a concentration camp that is much, much smaller than Las Vegas. If you drop a nuke in there, then we're not talking genocide anymore. We're talking Holocaust, because you're trying to kill them all. There's millions of people there, right? So, and he says, starve them all, kill them all. This is a genocidal monster and an obvious terrorist.
It's disgusting.
Obvious, right? If you say no, starving Palestinians to death or nuking them doesn't count, what you're saying is I'm deeply racist and I don't mind murdering Palestinians because I don't view them as full human beings. I view myself as superior to them. If you nuked us, then of course that would be the biggest catastrophe in the history of the world. But I'm going to fund AIPAC, which is going to give money to this terrorist, who's, by the way, sending Israel money to ironically starve the Palestinians. So it's not like Israel isn't already doing a genocide. If you're sending, going forward, if you're sending money to AIPAC.
Please don't.
No, you're declaring, now I'm telling you, you're declaring that you're in favor of genocides. And you never get to say never again, ever. Because that's you saying, no, never again to me, but I'd like to pay to make sure it happens to other people. Okay, so you can't argue when it's Randy Fine and he says kill them all. You can't argue with it. And AIPAC goes, no, that's the kind of morally depraved guy we like. And did you notice what that fat ass terrorist said? He said, there's something deeply wrong with this culture. Which culture? The culture that says murder every Palestinian? There's nothing wrong with that culture. But the culture says, can you please stop killing us? Oh, there's something wrong with that culture. They should know they're defeated. If they don't know that they're defeated and occupied, and they should give me all their goddamn land, otherwise murder them all. That's a terrorist you're looking at there, Randy Fine. By the way, is there a big censure movement to censure a guy is pro-terrorism, pro-Holocaust? Nothing.
Democratic senator.
Where's the anti-Semitism? Where's the anti-Semitism? I found one student on a college campus. Let's do congressional hearings. Oh, you like to murder all the Muslims? Who cares?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And in fact, on Breaking Points today, Crystal Ball specifically asked Democratic Senator Slotkin whether there's any effort to censure Randy Fine for the statements he's been making.
I can't wait for this.
And she says, no, not that I know of, but that she would allegedly support an effort.
Well, allegedly, why don't you start it? No, because you get funded by AIPAC. Yeah. She's not gonna start it, she's not gonna vote for it. By the way, all the Democrats, Johnny come lately Democrats, I am horrified by what's happening in Gaza. Oh, is that why you sent them $500 million 2 days ago?
Exactly.
You're not horrified, shut up, you hypocrite Democrats, pretending you're good guys. What did you do under Biden? You sent them $20 billion to continue the slaughter. Don't, shut up. Oh, that of course also goes for Republicans.
Yes.
I've got one thing I don't want to say, but go ahead.
Okay, so I want to get to Marjorie Taylor Greene because despite everything that we have criticized her for in the past, and those criticisms stand, I have to give her credit for not only calling out Randy Fine for the pig that he is, but for calling what's currently transpiring in Gaza what it should be called, a genocide. She posted on X, I remember the first time I met Randy Fine when he was a candidate before he barely won Florida's deep red 6th district seat. As we were being told he might actually lose the seat because the strong Trump district couldn't relate to him and didn't like him. He was telling me that he and his wife were looking forward to moving to Washington and he hadn't even won yet. I said to him that Washington isn't a good place to live and he should live in the district he will represent. You know, that whole representative thing, but he was adamant that they did not want to live in the district. And I thought, no wonder that district doesn't want to elect him. I can only imagine how Florida's 6th district feels now that their representative that they were told to vote for openly calls for starving innocent people and children. It's the most truthful and easiest thing to say that October 7th in Israel was horrific and all hostages must be returned. But so is the genocide, humanitarian crisis, and starvation happening in Gaza. But a Jewish US representative calling for the continued starvation of innocent people and children is disgraceful. His awful statement will actually cause more anti-Semitism. The voice of reason in this whole scenario, in this story we're covering, happens to be Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. Who had that on their bingo card? And And for that statement, I commend her. I commend her. She is I think she might be the first member of Congress, maybe not the first member of Congress, I take that back, but Republican member of Congress who has called this for what it is, a genocide.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to couch it in anything. Obviously,
100%.
It's a great statement, and if you say, "Well, I don't like Marjorie Taylor Greene, so I don't want her help in ending the genocide," you're a deeply selfish person. 100%. I don't want anything to do with you. Okay, what's stopping us from fighting her on immigration? Nothing. What's stopping us from fighting her on any other issue? Nothing. But if you say no, don't give her credit on this, there's something wrong with you. Okay, so it's a great statement by Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I'm proud that we had her on when she blocked a bill that was going to prevent anyone from boycotting Israel in America. They was going to take food off their table, etc. She didn't just say it; she voted the right way. She acted the right way on this issue. Okay, so now, if you, by the way, why did I say, hey, I think right-wing populists? Or it might be interesting to talk to and engage with, etc. Did I think that they're all magically going to become progressives overnight? No. Did I think they're all magically going to say, hey, we were wrong. I wish I voted for Kamala Harris. No, okay? But because they're honest, they might be honest in ways that bother us. They'll say things that we're like, whoa, I wish you hadn't said that. I wish you weren't so honest about that, right? You get a bland vanilla Republican, he'll go, oh, corporate tax cuts, etc. He won't say anything that's offensive, he'll just rob you in the middle of the night.
A good little robot,
right.
Yeah.
But at least when you have people who are honest, even with some opinions that we hate, when it comes time and there's a genocide and you need people to be honest on the other side, the corporate guys will never, ever, ever be honest, Republican or Democrat. That's why populism is better. Because even with all of its mess, you at least have people who can deal in reality instead of the giant lies that the establishment and mainstream media have been enforcing on us all these years. And finally, look, if folks think that there's nothing wrong with what's happening in Gaza, am I allowed to say, I wish what happened to Gaza happens to Tel Aviv? Now, you know that if I did say that, there would be hell to pay, right?
Right.
So I'm not saying that because I would never be that monstrous. But if there's nothing happening in Gaza that's objectionable, why wouldn't you want it happening in Tel Aviv?
What's good for the goose is good for the gander.
I thought there's nothing going on. There's no starvation. There's no harm. There's no nothing. There's nothing happening in Gaza. It's just the most moral army in the world handing out flowers and rainbows to everyone. So why wouldn't you want it to happen to Tel Aviv? Oh, right, because you know it is a genocide and what's happening to Gaza is one of the most despicable things we have seen in our lifetime.
When we come back from the break, we're going to pivot to other stories, including the aftermath of the arrests of protesters in Los Angeles as they were engaging in anti-ICE demonstrations. Turns out a lot of those criminal charges have been dropped, and we'll tell you why.
All right, we got Operation Joy coming up, so hang in there, everybody. We already got 1 million people who wrote in. I love it, and I'm gonna give you that quiz where I might or might not give you a prize. That's fun for everybody. And then, but there's something really important in the bonus episode today too. All right, and by the way, one other fun one. I might have broken a mic with my voice. I'm not really joking. Like I'm gonna show you the pictures and I'm gonna tell you what happened.
It's gonna be okay. Mike is expected to make a full recovery. He's in the hospital, but
stable condition. And back on the desk. Okay, Jen Stenson says, right now we have to support anyone who's telling the truth.
Yep.
Here on that. Adis Baratarovich writes in, I love both of you for your coverage on Gaza. This is a moment in history where both the heroes and the villains will be remembered. You guys are heroes. Thank you for saying that. I certainly don't know about that, but I do know this: the villains will be remembered, and they'll be remembered by me. So for whatever it's worth, but no, the people who at this late date are still saying genocide away are the worst people on earth. R. Stone says Trump is when affluenza goes unchecked. metastasized and given absolute power. I just have no words for the overwhelming evil at this point. The last thing we can take is another outsider hijacking populism for selfishness. I agree with every word of that. And so he's done great damage to the cause of populism by hijacking it in the way that he did. And an out of control affluenza is a perfect way to describe Trump. Never knows the consequences of his actions because they've never had any consequences. He's gotten away with everything just because he's rich. Kukuru writes in, America's only hope is to elect Jon Stewart for president. He's a populist and hell of a fighter. And the most important is he can communicate clearly and effectively. I totally agree. That's why I've been pushing him all along. Okay, Third Shift Zombie says about Marjorie Taylor Greene, we are officially in the opposite world. Yeah, we're in some sort of bizarre world, that's for sure. Ooh, this is a tough one.
Ooh, guys, there's new merch available in our Shop TYT store. Man, they're fast. I'm not gonna let you filibuster, bitch, is now available. We've got tank tops, so if you're interested, head on over to shoptyt.com. So
that's awesome. Yeah. Okay, so what I said was tough comment. Is South of Cloud 9 said she has more integrity than AOC and all the other Democrats, including Cory Booker and the Democratic representatives.
On this issue, I agree.
She voted the right way and they didn't, other than 4 of them. Dundada Dragon says, I'm gonna say for Cenk. Cenk was right. Marge called it a genocide. Let's go.
She also called what's happening in the West Bank an apartheid on the House floor. I don't think we covered that, but it happened weeks ago.
Yeah. Churchill de Lanosa says 100% Cenk. I've ended so many relationships with good people that cannot see what Israel is doing and that they could do no wrong. The best they can get to is it's a gray area. No, it's not a gray area at all. This is one of the most black and white things I have ever seen. If you call genocide a gray area, it's not gonna work. And I know you're just as frustrated as I am. Atomic Can says, such a weird thing to say that girls rape themselves, even if it's said in jest, just a weird thing to say. And the reason I say it is because it snaps people out of it. When mainstream media calls it a conspiracy theory, when you ask, wait, did the girls rape themselves? It forces them to realize their position is utterly absurd and totally indefensible.
And it's a cover up to protect the people who committed the rapes.
Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys, Mourners.
Everyone is freaking out about this.
Genes are passed down from parents to offspring, often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. My genes are blue.
Sydney Sweeney has her genes.
That ad for American Eagle has led to a bit of a kerfuffle, a debate, if you will, in regard to whether or not it's promoting racism or eugenics, which I think is a bit of a stretch, but let me give you all the details and you can decide for yourself. So this is a new ad campaign featuring wildly popular actress Sydney Sweeney. She is pretty good at selling products, which makes me understand why any brand would want her to be front and center of their advertising campaign. But the campaign circles around the tagline, Sydney Sweeney has great genes, spelled Jeans, right? Which can be also, genes can have a double meaning like genes, you're born with good genes.
And in the billboards, as you saw there, genes in the DNA version is cut out, right? Or crossed out, and then jeans as in the pants is filled in. It's a play on words, we got it.
Yeah, so she's beautiful. Obviously she has good genes in terms of like how it has led to her physical appearance. And people have taken issue with that. So many people believe the nod to her great genes is the brand flirting with the idea of eugenics, white supremacy, and Nazi propaganda. Mostly because she is white, blonde, with blue eyes, and of course, those are the women that should be banned from all advertising. Okay, like I don't understand what this argument even is.
Yeah, so we're asking you guys on the live chat shows, live 6 to 8 p.m. every day. Do you believe that ads are promoting eugenics? Yes or no? Okay, so now I'll start to weigh in. Split 2/3 no, but 1/3 saying yes. All right, so guys, if they we're talking about how white people and only white people or all white people have good genes, I'd be like, whoa, what the hell is that? Okay, maybe eugenics, all that stuff. But white people are also allowed to have good genes.
No, not allowed.
Right. If you say only white people, that's crazy, right? But if you say no, if you're gonna do an ad, and my guess is if they were gonna do this ad 2 years ago or 5 years ago, they would. This is why it's an interesting topic. I think they would not have put a white person in that ad. I think that they would have had a conversation with the advertising executives, etc., and they would have decided, people will say that we're being racist or eugenics or Nazi or something. So if we're gonna say someone has good genes, we should make it a minority. Okay, that's my guess. Maybe I'm wrong, but I have a pretty decent read of that culture, okay? So now white people are also allowed to have good genes, okay? And folks are saying,
this is so crazy.
Guys, it's a play on words. It's a play on words. If this is the hill you're choosing to die on, you're doing great damage. So because it annoys everyone.
Yeah, it does. It does. It is annoying. It's incredibly annoying. She is a popular actress who is helping brands sell their product. That's why they chose her. And yes, she happens to have good genes. She is an attractive woman. White women are allowed to be attractive as well. Okay, like what is this? But anyway, Washington Post style memo newsletter writer Shane O'Neill wrote in response to the ad, the first thing I thought of when I heard the tagline, Sydney Sweeney has great genes, was the DHS Instagram account, which posted a subtly racist painting a few weeks ago and an explicitly racist painting last week.
I don't believe you.
But Shane,
I don't know what it is.
But that's your problem, Shane. That's your problem. It's your problem that you saw an ad and you immediately thought of the DHS posting something that you also found to be racist on X or Twitter or whatever. Like, not everything is a racist dog whistle. This ad is not a racist dog whistle. In fact, it seems pretty racist to me that people immediately get offended and are up in arms because the person in the ad happens to have light skin, blue eyes, and blonde hair. Who cares?
Can I just say something there? I thought DHS for a second she was referring to some brand or something. Department of Homeland Security.
Yes.
Okay, so look, this is a good exercise, right? So when Department of Homeland Security or ICE goes after an undocumented immigrant who is a criminal and was convicted, that is not racist, okay? When ICE picks up a random Latino person who's actually a legal resident here,
or an American citizen.
Or an American citizen, or any of those folks who are perfectly legal here, and then deports them to a country that they're not from, like El Salvador, that is racist, okay? And if you're saying as a Republican, no, it's not. Guys, they're not picking up Norwegians, right? And they're not picking up in that case, in that hypothetical, and which is real, they're not picking up people who are undocumented or criminals. It's a perfectly documented person, but they're like, Latino, round them up, right? Racist. But when you get to this ad, which is not racist on its face, but you are interpreting it as racist because it's about a white person. If a white person has good genes, that must mean eugenics and Nazis, etc. When you do that, you lose, no one believes you, and you lose the credibility when you say ICE is being racist when they pick up random Latinos who are legally here. Then people stop listening to you and they don't believe you when you need them to believe you on things that are important and real.
Pick your battles. It's that simple. Pick your battles, and in my opinion, this is not the hill to die on. Look, let's talk about what's actually offensive, okay? What I find very offensive about this ad, there's two things actually, is number one, Sydney Sweeney needs to make statements and not make every sentence a question. Number one, I find that offensive. Number two, what is that outfit? You're trying to sell your jeans and that's what you're dressing her up in? Unacceptable.
I don't know why it's so baggy.
The baggy jeans are not for me, they're for other people, okay? The beautiful curves of a woman, whether she's more curvaceous, less curvaceous, a woman's body, beautiful. Let's show it. Okay, the baggy jeans, and then jean on jean violence, I don't allow it, okay? You gotta pick, either you're gonna wear the jean jacket or you're gonna wear the jean pants. But you can't have it both at the same time. It's unacceptable.
So I'm coming at it in a way that in a funky place that I'm not sure a lot of people are, which is that I think it is partly because of the Trump era that they're now willing to put a white person in an ad that they would normally put a minority in, right? So because they'd be too nervous and touchy about saying good white people have good genes. But I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think that we should all be equal. Like, guess what? Sorry to everyone who hates me. I have good genes. Not in terms of attractiveness, but in other regards, right? My logical reasoning is excellent. But it's not exclusive to Turks, and it doesn't exclude Turks. So you can stop excluding white people from things that are good and positive. And I get it. In the past, it was the media would only associate things that were positive with white people. I get that happened.
Yeah, that definitely happened.
That definitely happened. But now the right response to that is equality. The right response to that isn't now we exclude white people from that because of that ugly past.
And by the way, I mean, if you've been watching television shows and if you've been watching ads, they're way more diverse than they were when I was growing up. When I was growing up, every supermodel was white. Now you look at ads, you look at supermodels, people with diverse backgrounds, it's a wonderful thing. But let's not ruin it by needlessly being like hateful and discriminatory against actresses or models who do happen to be white and are good at selling product for these brands. So it's that simple. I don't think we need to make a big deal about this. But here we have it. People are making a big deal about it.
Last thing I'll say is that I like that our audience is split on it because it's a diversity of thought. Even if I don't agree with you, but you make your argument in the chat, etc., and you're part of the show, good, that's how we sort things out, right? And don't get offended on either side. We're all trying to figure out the world together. And so I like that we have a community that's got an open mind, that it's got diverse opinions.
Okay, let's try to do one more story. We're gonna go over a little bit too bad. Okay, let's do it.
Now you have this insane policy where they're going to Home Depot and rounding people up, and it's kind of scary, and people that are American
because
citizens,
people have been here a long time, and and then you're rounding people up. It is scary, but it's like a response to it's that massive influx.
Yeah, it's an overcorrection,
right?
And it's also like they have a mandate, I think, of like 3,000 people a day they want to deport. Just you got a bunch of people that are totally innocent are going to get caught up in that.
Right.
They have been,
right?
They have been. A lot of people that have green cards, a lot of people that are supposed to be over here. And then they're kicking students out that like write articles they don't like.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah. You love to see it. Joe Rogan is not letting up in his criticism toward the Trump administration and their deportation efforts, their immigration policies. And meanwhile, Trump's Department of Justice has had to drop cases against multiple protesters who were detained during anti-ICE demonstrations in Los Angeles, following news that US immigration officials actually made false claims to justify their arrests. Amazing. So let's get into the details. The news comes in a stunning piece that was written by The Guardian and covers the anti-ICE protests that took place in Los Angeles in June. Reporter Sam Levin was able to obtain federal law enforcement files pertaining to the protesters who were in fact arrested, finding that the Justice Department has charged at least 26 people with assaulting and impeding federal officers and other crimes during the protests over immigration raids. Now, assaulting a federal officer is serious business. In fact, if you're found guilty of doing that, it is a felony that could lead to a 20-year prison sentence. Now, prosecutors, however, have since had to have been forced to dismiss at least 8 of those felonies, many of them which relied on officers' inaccurate reports, court records show. And the officers we're talking about here are with Border Patrol. Okay, so Border Patrol agents are the ones who gave these statements that ended up being false. The Justice Department has also dismissed at least 3 felony assault cases. Now again, if you're wondering what exactly was in those inaccurate reports, here's one example. So DHS stated that they arrested 2 men for physically assaulting officers in response to 2 sisters that were being arrested. But according to the records, those men had actually already been arrested before the arrest of the two sisters or the two women. They were arrested earlier in a completely separate incident. So a DHS agent stated that they were shoved by one of the two men. However, footage of the incident indicates that the opposite was true, that the officer was the one who shoved the civilian. Now, Christine Soto DeBerry, who's a former California state prosecutor, stated that the filing and dismissal of these cases might be a feature, not the bug. It seems this is a way to detain people, hold them in custody, instill fear, and discourage people from exercising their First Amendment rights. And The Guardian, by the way, also notes that 6 of the dismissed cases, the DOJ has essentially refiled lower level misdemeanors against the defendants. So I'm really happy to see that The Guardian followed up on this story to see what happened to the individuals who were accused of doing these things, whether or not there was actually any evidence to support the allegations that were made by Border Patrol agents and by DHS. And this is why Americans don't trust our institutions. When our institutions lie, when they literally do the opposite of what they're supposed to do, when they lie about American citizens to justify their imprisonment, yeah, that leads to distrust, rightfully so. Cenk.
So real quick, 2 things. One, about the arrests. So Anna read you one of the absurd parts they were lying about when it happened, and it was obvious. But second part was amazing. They said that the girls had pushed the agents, but on tape you see that it's the opposite, right? So they then changed the report to say that they were getting in the agent's face. They had clenching fists, and my favorite, they had, quote, pre-assault indicators.
Oh, okay.
So now you could be arrested for pre-crime, okay? You had pre-assault indicators. I didn't like the way you were holding your hands. Okay, I mean, if you don't realize that's BS, you're not gonna understand anything, okay? So, all right, so that's how wrong they were. Now on Rogan, look, before I was right about Rogan, I was wrong about Rogan, okay? So I understand why people thought, oh, he's just right wing. Oh my God, he endorsed Trump. I hate. Now, what I noticed about those podcasters is no, they're independents and they're not going to be just cult members. Okay, fine. But remember, before that, I got super mad at Rogan a couple of years ago, and I thought he had become totally right wing, and I was just as wrong at that time as a lot of people are today, right? But at some point, the weight of the evidence has to overwhelm you, right? So now he has objected to, basically picking up students from college campuses and arresting them on behalf of Israel. He has objected to our policy in Israel. He has objected to what Trump has done with the Epstein files and not releasing them. He has objected to the core immigration tactics of the Trump administration. I mean, these are massive objections about massive issues. If you can't see that he is independent now, then you're trying super hard not to see it. So I appreciate that. I still don't agree with a lot of his opinions, but that's the beautiful thing about America. We don't have to. And I appreciate that he's going in this direction because that is where the majority of the country is going. Let's take yes for an answer. Let's fight for our rights and get back to sanity. All right, guys, in the bonus episode, we have Operation Joy. You're gonna love it. If you've never been part of Operation Joy, it's as guaranteed, I was gonna say a good time. Sounds funny.
It's gonna be a good time.
So hit the join button below or tyt.com/join. And also you'll get Old School tonight. That's another members show. So we'll see you there.
You